mamshich into the night.
14 days after.
So, well, if you want, we'll go through that story afterwards. The after party. Yeah. All right. Yeah? Okay. Tonight, Baruch Hashem, we'll gather. Oh, the Baron's here. We're gathered here for Yartzeit Suda for Eluzer Mordechai and Rav Gedaliah Aaron Kenig. Rav Eluzer was Rav in Tzfas. He built Hilula Nachal Makor Chachma in Tzfas. And Hashem was Mesav a lot of Sibuvim of genetic illness, of a lung disease that Rav Eluzer ended up coming to America, and he ended up staying in my father's house when I happened to have been there also. And he got a lung transplant, Baruch Hashem, as many people know the story, and he lived for another 14 years. And during that time, he came back and forth between America and Eretz Yisrael, and we were zeichet to have a very amazing connection with the Rav, very unique and amazing connection. So, just like to say a few words in honor of the art site. When you speak about tzaddikim, it's a very funny thing, both to speak about it and to listen. Because someone pointed this out recently that, you start to speak about a gadol and you say his Torah learning was incredible, it was so, amazing. So what shaykhs do we have to that? Like, we don't even really relate to it. Like, we learn a little bit, we understand a little bit, we remember a little bit. We don't have like even the kelim to understand it. You speak about his avodah, his ilama, his tzidkas. Like, we don't really know, we don't even really relate to it. So there are some things, though, that we can relate to, and that I'll speak about tomorrow morning. Mr. Shem, we're having another Suda. Let's say the midais of the tzaddik that we can relate to. But another aspect is when we see clear miracles and Ruach HaKodesh type things, it has an effect on us in that we don't really understand how he's doing it or what he's doing, but it affects us, and it's like, wow, these tzaddikim are amazing. Baruch Hashem, my father was zeichet to know the Rimnitzer, so I grew up with first-hand stories of the Rimnitzers just doing all sorts of wild things, just clear and open miracles, and you grow up like that. So no matter where you go in life, there's tzaddikim that do these things that are connected to Hashem in an incredible fashion. So that's one level of amazement that you can have from the tzaddikim. But I think we see from this week's parsha also that every miracle is not just stam, a miracle. It's not just that, wow, here's a yid that's so connected to Hashem, much higher than I can imagine, and he's doing miracles. But usually, invariably, there are lessons and messages to be learned from every single miracle. So in this week's parsha is a classic example. HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Moshe, you have to free the nation, go, be the redeemer, be the goyal. Moshe Rabbeinu is like back and forth, no, yes. Kitzer, Hashem says, I'll give you signs. Take the stick that's in your hand, hit it down to the ground, boom, it turns into a snake. Moshe Rabbeinu runs away, Hashem says, grab the stick, grab the snake, grabs the snake, it turns back into a stick. Wow, I think gives him another one. So you say, okay, I mean, if someone would do that right here, take a stick and turn it into a snake, we'd all be like, whoa, we'd be bowing down to him. But in those days, apparently, they went to the necromancers, the magicians in Egypt, and they were like, yeah, no problem, boom. Like sticks into snakes. That's like baby stuff, So it wasn't necessarily, I think, HaKadosh Baruch Hu was saying, go do a miracle and wow the people and wow everyone. HaKadosh Baruch Hu was saying, go do a miracle that teaches them a lesson, that's saying something. What was the lesson? You were the stick in my hand, Klal Yisrael. We, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, we were so connected. And now, all of a sudden, life seems like in the Golus of Mitzrayim, like a snake. Everything is just serpent, Yetzer Hara, darkness. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu was telling him, that name snake, that was me, that was the stick. And he says, grab the snake. It turns back into a stick. The whole time it was me. HaKadosh Baruch Hu was telling him a message to send Klal Yisrael through this miracle that it was all me. And really, with every single miracle of a tzaddik, we can learn lessons, even if not necessarily it's open, clear, but there is what to be learned from every single miracle and every single story that we can see from the tzaddikim. So I just like to share a few of these things that I experienced with the Rav and to take some lessons out of it, to see what we can learn from it. One of my first meetings with the Rav, before he came to live in our house, he came to the mikveh a few times. Nachman Lichter brought him, and we were just getting to know him. And he needed to stay in a place, so he stayed in Nachman's house. Nachman gave up his whole house with him and his whole family. He moved into the basement, and basically the whole house was the Rav's. And during that time, I was going through a whole bilbul and sfeikus, and I had a big suffix in my life. It was with dating, and my mom was just in the pits. I didn't know what to do, so I was like, let me go to this new Rav that's in town that came a few times that we met. That seems like an amazing person. Let me speak to him. So I went there, and it was actually beautiful. It was amazing. It was Parshas Lech Lecha. It was right after Sukkot, and the Rav was already holding a Likutei Halachos and a Likutei Moharan in his bed. He couldn't even get up really, in his bed, learning Torah Mei Chanukah of Chanukah, and he was already deep into it. And I spoke to him, and he gave me a lot of chizuk, a lot of love, a lot of beauty and chizuk and life and what I was going through. And he told me, in the middle of the conversation, you should go back and say Kapitel Kuf Zayin and learn the halachos of Arba Tzichin L'Hoidais and it's Hashem. And he kept giving me chizuk, and I kept asking him questions. And after I think 30, 40 minutes, it was a beautiful, beautiful conversation. I was leaving, and as I was going out, I said, "Oi," I just gave a krach. Turned to me, "What oi? What was that oi?" I said, I have no idea what to do. He goes, "What do you mean? I told you. Say Kapitel Kuf Zayin, learn Arba Tzichin L'Hoidais. What oi?" So I was like, okay, that was very clear. So I went home. I said Kapitel Kuf Zayin. I called him up. Actually, I didn't know where to find it. I found the halachas. I learned the halachas. 5 minutes later, I was walking around, stopping my house, and the whole suffix just disappeared, and it was like all super clear. And it was an amazing thing. But it also showed me that was a very big mahalach of the Rav, is that as hard as things are, as dark as they are, we should already be praising. And a few weeks later, whoever was zeicher to be there for the first Hanukkah, that he was in the house there in Briarwood, and he was mamish weeks away from passing away from his illness, which Baruch Hashem he didn't, because he got lung transplant, but he was very, very sick. Every single night he gave Torah from Yemei Hanukkah. I remember the first night, I think he said that the whole inyan of praising HaKadosh Baruch Hu and knowing HaKadosh Baruch Hu is that when you praise Hashem, that's called knowing Hashem, because really everything is from Hashem and everything is good. And he mamash was living that, even though he was going through such tsaras at the time. Anyone who saw him, he was on double oxygen. It was incredible how sick he was, and he kept fighting and kept trying to do things. But during that time, it wasn't easy. It wasn't like he was very, very sick. And there were times I remember they came over to me and he said, we have to daven for Yeshua because I don't know what to do, it doesn't look good, and we were all, I remember I was with your brother Shimmy, and we were driving on the West Side Highway, and it was around New Year's, around now, we were just davening, some lung transplant, you need to get a guy in a car accident, we were looking around, we were who's it going to be, where's it coming, when's the Yeshua coming? Came New Year's, nothing happened, we were Hashem, now that's the time, because the minhag by non-Jews is maybe to drink a little bit New Year's, and there's more lung transplants, if you know what I mean, on New Year's. So it still didn't come, and we were just oh no, we missed our chance,
Overdose.
Yeah, whatever. Different Indian, but yeah. The nakuda was that it wasn't easy, and it was very difficult times. But the Rav kept trying as much as he could to do what he could, and to thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and to be joyful, and to do whatever he could. I remember Rab David Sears came there, and he would learn Sipur Maisis with the Rav. The Rav said he could barely hold cup. They said that the amount of oxygen that the Rav's body was processing, most people would be passed out on a bed, almost non-conscious, just lying there, basically in and out of consciousness. And he fought so hard just to stay there and to speak to people and even to learn. And he said Sipur Maisis is something that he was able to get, and they went through, I think, the whole Sipur Maisis together, and during that Tekufa. It was amazing. And so even during that time, he was always trying to thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and it finally came, many people know the story, but to make it short, there came the night of Parshas Bo, and as Jojo said, there was some guy in Philadelphia that decided to give his lung, so to speak, to the Rav, and his family donated it to save other people's lives. And we got the phone call in the middle of the night at 3:30 in the morning. the gabbai didn't exactly know English, so he ran and woke me up and said, Yoeli, is it Colombia? I was like, yeah, what? This is the lung transplant coordinator. Do you want the lung? I was like, yes, of course. It was Friday night. She was like, okay, so write down this number. I was like, maybe you could call the number. She says, if you don't want it, we'll go to the next person. No, of course I want the lung. We're going to write down whatever number you want us to write down. Then we started the whole process, and it was an incredible night to experience. There were very few people there, and many, many stories, but basically Yitzchak, his brother, went in, and for the past like 3 or 4 Shabbosim they were singing this song, the Shabbos is tired, and it was like this old Yiddish niggin that they were singing by the Shabbos Suda, and they used to keep the lights on in the Rav's room because in case he got it on Friday night, they wouldn't have to be mechal one less thing for Shabbos, so they kept the lights on every Shabbos, and he just walked in and he just started singing the niggin, and the Rav was sleeping. And the Rav woke up and was like a little shocked, and he was like, what's going on? And Rabbi just walked into Shabbos and just started singing the niggin and just shaking his head. And the Rav like had this look, and then he just composed himself, and from that moment on he was just total Yeshiva Das going into this thing. Even though later he told my father that if he couldn't even walk then, he said if I would have been healthy I would have ran. That's how scared I was. He was scared. He was fighting, he was calm, there was nothing nowhere to go. He gave up everything to Hashem and said, wherever you take me. And many stories, I happen to have I went through many tchelas stages in my life, and I went through the Redziners, and then I went through the Mizrahi tchelas. At that point, I was wearing my Mizrahi tchelas in front of the Rav the whole time, and no one said a word to me for months. And then at that night, right when he was leaving, he said, Yoeli, come here, get a little sakit. And he said, here, I made tzitzis for you and for your father as a karsatov for all the good that you've done for me. I was like, wow. And it didn't have tchelas, so I'm even yavin. So, the Rav's ways were very, very calm and peaceful. And he gave us an invitation for his wedding, for Shimon's wedding. And then, with all the preparations, finally we got everything ready, and he was going out with Zalman to the car, and he was in the old shul there, standing by the bima, standing there, and my father came in, and he starts thanking my father. Achnas Orchim was so pleasant, was so amazing, Asher Koyach, and he starts praising him and thanking my father. Broke down. He said, the Rav's coming back. You're not going anywhere. You're coming back. He goes, Hashem is big. Hashem is big. He couldn't. That's Hashem. I hope so. We didn't know. We didn't have any inkling what would happen. Many people don't make it through that operation, and Baruch Hashem, it was amazing. The night before, 2 nights before, a few days before, the Rav was, like I said, in a very, very bad matzav. And then Zalman just recently told me this. He brought the Skelena Rebbe there, who passed away a few years ago, I believe. And they came at, I think it was 2:30 in the morning, and they called me down. I came down again, and the Skelena Rebbe was there, and he brought out 2 bechers and with a hagofen, and he made a hagofen, and the Rav was sitting there like they were like an inch apart, and he was giving him brachas and divrei Torah. There were like 10, 15 people around, and then the Skelena Rebbe left, and all the Hasidim and including all the people from Rav Kenig like walked out the Skelena Rebbe. So I was just standing there. So I felt I'm not going to leave the Rav. I sat down with the Rav, and the Rav was shining. It was like a new human being. And he said, did you hear what he said? I was like, honestly, I didn't understand the word. He spoke very, very difficult to hear. And he started explaining to me, I don't even remember, Zalman still remembers, some Or Chodash, the Or Ches, and he gave him a whole Torah that he's going to get a refuah shalema. And the Rav was like a new person. He was with such energy. And Taka, a few nights later, the operation went successfully, Baruch Hashem. Zalman told me afterwards that the Rav was the 3rd on the table. Every single lung transplant, they prep 3 people on the operating table, because if the first one doesn't fit, they go straight to the second one. They don't want to lose a lung, and there's no time to wait for another guy to come. They prep 3 people. So they have first guy, the second one, maybe he decides is the last second, which many people do, that they don't want it. They'd rather live than go under the knife. He was the 3rd one. For some reason or other, the first guy didn't take it. The second one didn't take it, and went to the Rav, and he was able to live for another 14 years. And it's with that message I was speaking about. We have to take out from everything that we experience is this nakuda that we already have the Yeshua, everything's already here, and the more we think HaKadosh Baruch Hu in it, the more we can see. I just heard a Dvar Torah from Simcha Shor, Simcha Shor, that he said that this past week's parsha was Vayechi. Vayechi Yaakov is Parsha Stuma. There were supposed to be 9 letters. So we know that there's letters in the Torah, Oisios, and the Oisios teach us all the lessons, right? They tell us so much, right? So they're telling us messages. But the white parts, so to speak, in the middle, in between the letters, say nothing. They're silent. But that silence says even more. Like we say, Baruch Ata Hashem. So, like the Rebbe taught us that Hashem, when you call a name of someone, like that's why in Breslov we say Shemus HaTzadikim. You call a name, you don't just call, a part of you call the whole person. So you say Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. I'm just calling the whole essence of Reb Shimon Bar Yochai towards you. So it's a tremendous Yeshua, it could bring tremendous goodness. So when you say Hashem's name also, it brings tremendous goodness. But Hashem, in his infinite name, still has tzura, Yud Kei Vav Kei. Ata, by the Balatani, he speaks about Ata a lot. Ata is you. When you say you, you're speaking to the person, but without any tzura, without any connection to any tzimtzumim. It's just the infinite person. So when we say Baruch Ata Hashem, also we're connecting to the infinite HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and we're connecting to all the finite. That's the part of what I was speaking about, the miracles that just tell us there is Hashem. And then there's Hashem where there's the lessons that we learn from it. So Vayechi Yaakov, Rav Yisrael Simcha said, it's 8 letters with space in between. So this Vayechi Yaakov fills that empty space. So the empty space has infinite amount of goodness that it's teaching us silently. So the Vayechi Yaakov fills that space. What's Pshat a little bit Vayechi Yaakov is that you could learn Pshat very simply that Yaakov Avinu Nebuch, his kid Yosef, was gone, and he was very, very sad about that. And now his kids are trying to get food, and they're lost Shimon, and now they're going to lose Binyamin. All of a sudden he gets this Basura Toiva, and he comes down to Mitzrayim, and all of a sudden the whole family is reunited, and he's sitting around the table with his Kinderlach and his Einiklach, and they have matching Venetini shoes, and such Yiddish Nachas, and it's Vayechi Yaakov, finally he was living. But I think the Pshat is probably a lot deeper. I think, in a certain extent, one of the lessons that you can learn from it is that Vayechi Yaakov is, for 22 years, Yaakov didn't have the Hashras HaShechina because he was mourning over the death, the assumed death of Yosef Tzaddik. After that, in Mitzrayim, and it might have even taken a few moments and a few days and a few years to recognize this, Yaakov came to a recognition that the 22 years that he was mourning weren't real because Yosef was alive. And there was therefore no reason to even mourn. And so Vayechi Yaakov, he recognized it makes no sense. Everyone speaks Vayechi Yaakov in Mitzrayim. He lived in Eretz Yisrael. He had all these times in Eretz Yisrael. Now in Mitzrayim, when he knows that this is starting a crazy dark period for Klein of the 400 years of Galus, which represent all the Galuses that we're still going through today, he was alive. So I think that's Pshat. The Vayechi Yaakov is that he was recognized, and that's why I think the Rav taught us with his simcha and his chizuk in the hardest times always, was that we have to recognize that Hashem is with us all the time. And that all the times that we think that we're meant to be in mourning, obviously there's a time and place to mourn, but b'derech klal, we can always see the light and recognize that, like we're zeicha to learn the Torah of Aye now, that when you get dark times, you could say, you could just feel depressed, you could feel broken, you could feel lost, sveikis, bilbul, mirurim, difficulties, okay. You could say, But the Rebbe taught us that you don't say Oy. You say HaKadosh Baruch Hu is here. It's all Hashem, Vayechi Yaakov. But Hashem, you're hiding, and that you don't want to do either. Aye, where are you hiding? Rebbeinu Shalom, you're here, but where are you hiding? So Hashem should help us. This b'schus the Rav, b'schus the Heilige Yortzeit. We should be zeicha that in this long Galus that we're still going through, to have that Vayechi Yaakov, that energy, that life force of Yaakov that takes us through till Mashiach. Shkoyach. first class is 7%.
Ja,